Welcome to episode 8 of the Life in Bomb City podcast, brought to you by the Social and Behavioral Sciences Department at Amarillo College. I'm Aaron Favor.
And I'm Dr. Beth Rodriguez.
This podcast is produced in the Panhandle PBS and FM 90 studios on the Washington Street campus. It's available in iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, podcast apps, and podcatchers. Beth and I are with Frank Bellizzi and with Amy Presley, who Frank teaches history in our department, and Mr. Bellizzi is a graduate of Freed-Hardeman University. He went on to study theology and receive a Master's of Divinity from Harding School of Theology in Memphis, Tennessee. After that, Frank got a second master's degree at Yale Divinity School in New Haven, Connecticut. He's currently a PhD candidate at Texas Tech University in the field of history. He teaches American history here at AC. He was a minister among Churches of Christ for about 25 years, and he's a huge film buff. Great to have you with us this morning, Frank.
Thanks so much. I've been a fan of the podcast ever since I started listening, and so I'm one of your listeners, and so when I had the opportunity to get to sit in on today's episode, thrilled, honored, all of that.
Yeah. And you're a wonderful colleague as well to both Beth and I.
Yes, we're excited to be here.
Amy Presley is the program director here at FM 90. She's going to be joining us as well. Amy also co-hosts the podcast Check Me Out, a podcast for book lovers. We've mentioned it in prior episodes at the very, very end. Today's topic...
And that is the end of my credentials.
Well...
You talked about his for like 4 minutes, and I'm like, cool. You should have started with me. Hi.
Well, part of your credentials I didn't get to yet. I was going to say that Amy and her husband, notably just now, they did blow everyone away in a Christmas movie trivia contest at Recreation.
Boom.
And
who needs a PhD when you can win at Recreation?
And let it be duly noted that Amy's probably young enough to be my daughter, so I have a head start on you there when it comes to education.
So very excited about our topic today. It's safe to say that countless families spend hours and hours watching holiday movies together outside of playing games and drinking hot chocolate. We thought we would share with our listeners some of our own favorite movies to watch this time of year, as well as talk about the reasons why we like to watch them. So,
yeah, before we get going, I'm just wondering, are you guys going to stay in town or are y'all traveling for the holidays?
I have parents, siblings, children. My wife and I have 6 children total.
Wow.
So that's a pretty difficult crew to get together all at the same time. I'm waiting to hear from my kid's sister who lives in Arkansas as to when she's coming this direction, because I live closer to our folks than she does. So when she and her crew show up, that's when I think I'll try to show up. But the rest of the time I'll be in Amarillo.
Okay.
I will be closing on a new house a month from today exactly. So
congratulations.
Thank you. I will be packing all of Christmas. I will not be going anywhere.
But instead of unwrapping, you're going to be wrapping.
Yes, yes, all Christmas long.
Don't wrap up the cat.
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
If you have one, right?
Does your cat like Jell-O?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And closing on the new house. We're actually staying here. We left town for Thanksgiving. And so my wife's family is all here, and we're looking forward to kind of bedding down here in the Panhandle and just enjoying Christmas in the High Plains. So.
Yeah, we're going to my parents' ranch. Cheyenne Station Ranch is what it is. It's between here and Boys Ranch and Channing, kind of out in that area. And so the whole family's coming down. So my brother, who just moved from California down to Fort Worth, is coming. My sister's coming, and my other brother, all the kids, everybody. So it should be a lot of fun.
Wow.
I know. I'm excited.
Wide open spaces with the family.
Yes.
All right.
That's right.
Exciting. Okay, so we decided we were going to do this in chronological order rather than just go around the table and just kind of hit randomly. 1983, A Christmas Story comes out. Who loves A Christmas Story?
Me. That's like that's my jam, y'all. So I can say I'm a pretty solid Christmas Story fan because I have a full-size leg lamp that resides in my living room year round. It does not ever leave. So once you put the leg lamp out, it's hard to just take that away and put it somewhere else. Like, now, I can't just store it.
Yeah.
Did you win that in the Christmas movie trivia?
I did not. I think I won a gift certificate to Recreation when I won that. I did not win a major award. I won a minor award, but it was still a good award. But I love I think that it's a period piece, and that kind of sets it up. So you've got, and what we were talking about before we got started, we don't really know what year it's set in. And there's been a lot of people talk about what year it could be. So what are our thoughts on what year we think it could be?
When I watch that movie, I think, okay, 1940s.
Yeah.
And that's about as specific as I can get.
Pre-war.
Something like, or maybe in the midst of the war, something
Maybe.
like that. I think, of course, a car buff, someone who knew about the histories could look at the models that are on the street in the parade scene, or when they go downtown, or the car that the family has, or whatever, and maybe have an idea about that. But you're right that it's a debated issue among Christmas story buffs as to what year specifically it is.
And
that's what it was. I think I was reading somewhere that they were looking at one of the calendars that was on the wall, and they were saying that one of the days it came, I think on there, it was December 25th was on a certain day, and that only happened in this year. It was like this huge discussion about what year it really was.
Well, the book that it was based on was actually written in 1966, and it's called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And I've actually read that book as well. And it was written by Gene Shepard. But, so yeah, I'm sure it's all
Who is also the narrator.
Yes, of the film.
For the main character.
Yes, of Ralphie.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so not only is he a hilarious writer, but his voice is just so great. In that movie.
I didn't realize, whenever I was in high school, my boyfriend's family had never seen that film. And I was like, how have you not seen this? But they were big on Miracle on 34th Street, and they had their favorites. And so I introduced them to that film, and they were like, this is so good. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes you think about your own childhood. It makes you think about department stores and catalogs, and, how do you get your parents to buy you a BB gun when you probably don't need one,
The imagination surrounding and all the magic of Christmas itself.
Yes.
He's going and having all these dreams of what life will be like once he does get what he's asking for.
Yeah.
If he gets it.
All the bad guys are going to get shot, and they're going to run away.
Yeah,
you save your family. It's like, I love the imagination that goes into that film, because it really does take you back to your own childhood.
It does.
I think my favorite part really is that it's so family oriented. It's like they all listen to the radio show together because there's no TV. They don't have their electronics that they're going to do anything. He's waiting on that decoder ring from the Little Orphan Annie show. Just all of that little part. It just shows like that time period, and I love that. It makes it seem so much more like Christmas is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Like now it seems like Christmas comes and goes, and maybe it's because we're adults now, but it just feels like it's here and then it's gone. But I remember as a kid, it was like this, you waited forever, and it was this big, huge thing. And that's kind of how I feel like when he goes up to the Santa Claus and asks, if that line is forever. And then he gets to finally ask for it. And I just think all of that whole situation just is so neat.
I so identify with Ralphie because I was the goofy kid who would knew exactly what I wanted for Christmas. And then I was the kid who was likely to freeze up when and what do you want for Christmas, little boy? A football? Sure, a football. I don't know what I want. And then he has to scramble back and say, no, what I really want is the Red Ryder BB gun. So I was, kind of like that. And I love the fantasy that he has where he eventually goes blind as a result of the Lifebuoy soap.
That's right.
And these fantasies, like these revenge fantasies that you had against your parents for making you do whatever it was. So for me, it was like taking out the trash at night, and going out to the dumpster in my little hometown in Oklahoma. Of course, there were all kinds of monsters, bad people, between the back door of my house and the dumpster in the alley. And so that was really cruel to have sent me out there to take out the trash. And I remember having like these revenge they'll be sorry when I get abducted, or murdered or whatever it is while taking out the trash.
Soap poisoning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Soap poisoning.
I think we all, though, can identify with Ralphie, like as a kid, because I was blonde headed. I had glasses. I was real nerdy. Like I was probably, the kid. Well, I was not the kid that was going to do the triple dog dare you. Like I was not that kid.
That's me.
Yeah. See, I was not going to fall for that, but I would have been the bystander that would have totally went and told the teacher, like, oh man, like some bad stuff just happened. I'm like, who is involved?
Even the bullies in that movie
Yeah.
seem like they're kind of endearing in
Yeah,
a weird way.
right?
We've got the music from Peter and the Wolf
Yeah.
scene. When it's like, I mean, it really kind of captures the fear that you kind of experience as a kid whenever you're trying to avoid that type of conflict.
And who hasn't had to wear something stupid that one of your relatives gave you for Christmas? You know what I
Every
mean?
family, right?
I totally identified with that. I was like, oh man, there's always one sweater or hat or something that
And
somebody
this person
bought you.
worked so hard to make this for you, so you're morally obligated to wear it.
Exactly.
And of course, food is like that too. Like there's something you
better
cannot-
eat that.
You have to eat it.
Yeah.
You can't identify it. It doesn't smell good, look good. You know you're going to get sick, but this
You gotta
person worked
try
so
it.
hard. You got to try it. You got to eat
So
it.
true. Okay, so what is your absolute favorite part of that movie?
Honestly, I think because I identify with this really hard too. My dad loved cars and was a mechanic and all of that. Something about holding the hubcap with the bolts in it and him. He's, timing it, time me. My dad was all about time me. Like that's what he was about. And every road trip, time me, I'm going to beat my time to Oklahoma City this time, So, that part and the fudge, but I didn't say fudge, that whole part is like, and then it comes to the soap and all of that. So I love that part. I identify with that. And I think it's like so jolly and happy. And then it's like, in a kid's mind, it is tragic when you say the F word in front of your family, especially in a Christian household, especially in the 40s.
Exactly.
So,
And
So close to
every-
Christmas.
that too.
In every family, probably in every marriage, like there's this bit of denial that permits the relationship to be as good as it is.
Yes.
So this whole thing about, well, where did you learn that word?
Yes.
Yes.
And of course, the old man cusses a blue streak, right? Every time he fixes the furnace or whatever, and it's like, where did you hear that word?
That's
It
such
must
a
have
good
come
point.
it must have come from outside.
Do,
this
do, do
family.
you all remember your first swear word in front of your parents? Because I totally do. And where did I learn it? My father. So
I think that's a really good point, and it's really funny to think about that the furnace is he's in perpetual
love
conflict
that.
with the furnace.
I love that.
And the dogs next door. And I mean, just everything. It's just that is a great movie.
And if they're hillbillies next door, of course their last name is Bumpus, which
course.
is the quintessential hillbilly name. The Bumpus family next door with all the hound dogs.
Oh, that's good.
So we get to 1987. I picked Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon is one of my favorite Christmas movies, and it seems like it's kind of maybe an unconventional one. Maybe it's not even a Christmas movie, but it's certainly set around Christmas time.
Yeah, there's Christmas lights in some scenes and music.
There's Christmas
So-
music throughout. It is. It starts when the movie starts, and I'm not sure why it's one of my Christmas movies. It's something I grew up on. My dad, anything that my dad was watching, I was watching. So Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, anything that was going on there was something that I was brought into the orbit of. So some of the characters of Lethal Weapon, like Martin Riggs and Murtaugh, who's just turned 50, and he's trying to deal with his issue of getting older,
Dealing with his younger partner.
dealing with a younger partner who is don't look at me like that. Beth and I are only
face.
two years apart.
I know, but he seems a lot younger.
Okay, so anyhow.
Multiple reasons.
Okay. So Martin Riggs, though, is someone who I'd like to emphasize. Martin Riggs is somebody that's gone through some traumatic events. The movie starts with Christmas music, and it seems like it's jolly, but then you have a scene where a girl is doing cocaine, and she takes a leap off of the building. And so it starts off with suicide. Then we move into the crime elements of the movie itself. There are some things that make the movie notable historically, but we don't have to get into those. In addition to that, though, he's a Vietnam War vet. Vietnam is a massive underpinning motif of the movie. We have all of these different things, and they deal with family. So this is really important. Murtaugh is the stable character. Detective Murtaugh has the family. Detective Murtaugh has the kids that are growing up. They're getting bigger. The Martin Riggs doesn't have any family. His wife was killed in a car crash, and he is suicidal. He's dealing with that. He's having to figure out how to deal with it. It highlights a couple of different things. Number one, it highlights that Christmas isn't fun for everyone. It's difficult. The holiday season can be incredibly difficult for people that have lost loved ones and people that are in a period of bereavement. And so I don't know why I chose it as a favorite movie. I think that it's something that...
It's because, you know why? Because there's a hero there. It's during that time. There's a lot of action in it. And, I mean, with almost every movie, right, we wrap something up. It gets wrapped up. And for the most part, the good guys win. And that's a good Christmas. I mean, that's always a good Christmas story.
That's
good
right.
Guys win in the end.
It's an action movie too, which, you know, is appealing, you know, as we get into Die Hard and stuff like that. But also it's got that element to it, but maybe there's that historic element of the Vietnam era as well, where in the 1980s, America is kind of having to deal with what happened in the 1970s and the 1960s, and that being dealt with in pop culture. What do you think, Frank?
Absolutely. I mean, we've come a long way since Vietnam, although it's still kind of in our part of our national DNA. But one of the things that's happening about the time, as you were talking about the movie, Aaron, one of the things I thought about was that around that time, we were right on the verge of getting to the point where you could distinguish between whether or not you agreed as an American with the mission of an invasion or military presence around the world, and separate that from the people whose duty it was to actually do that. I think that during the Vietnam era itself, we had instances where people returned from Vietnam and were called baby killers. There's numerous stories of people being spit upon when they, landed. They had to travel in uniform, even if they were on a commercial carrier. And so a lot of times those guys were not treated very well. We get to the first Gulf War, and Americans by that point learned to say, I'm not exactly sure what I think about this war or this military involvement in Kuwait or Iraq, but I stand by the troops. That was one of the mantras, and that was kind of a moment where we were able to separate between the troops who were responsible for carrying out a mission and the administration, right, who ordered that mission. So that movie comes out at a time that's pretty close to that threshold, I think, in recent history.
It's a really interesting movie anyway, but it's also a lot of fun to watch. There's lots of action in it, and of course there's a lot of really interesting plot lines.
It's one of my husband's favorites. He'll watch it every time it's on. All of them. How many are there?
I think there's 4.
Okay. He'll watch every single one if he can, no matter what.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're all different, and they all tackle different political issues.
Yep,
I think by Lethal Weapon 4, we're dealing with gangs and cop killer bullets and things like that. So there's a social component to it, and it's really fun to talk about. We get to 1988, and it's Die Hard season. Die Hard has been nominated and has won among several awards among men as being the best Christmas movie of all time. And what's interesting...
Again, it's funny because the only thing that really makes it a Christmas movie is that he came to surprise his wife at her new business, and they're having a Christmas party.
Literally.
That's it.
Exactly. Right. And I mean, we've got the music and all that other stuff. We've got the police officer that's down there kind of keeping him grounded. McClane, this is officer or detective John McClane from New York, who comes to visit his wife in Los Angeles. There's memes all over the internet that say, it's not Christmas until Hans Gruber falls from Nakatomi Tower or Plaza. Hans Gruber, by the way, is played significantly enough by Alan Rickman, who becomes really, really important in American pop culture and in British pop culture with his identity as Professor Snape in the Harry Potter series. And he goes on. He's a great bad guy. What did he play? He's the bad guy in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He was the naughty sheriff of Nottingham.
Right. He's the one, he's the guy who steps on and you're like, oh, there's the bad guy. I gotcha. Yeah. There you are.
But he plays a German terrorist in this movie, who's really not a terrorist. That's all like guys, and really what he wants is he's a bank robber essentially, and so McClane, once again, we have this hero, I guess, the one person that can do anything. He happens to step out of the room to go change his clothes, and he witnesses the killing of of one of the CEOs or whatever it is of the company. And he goes on a one-man hunt. It's kind of like the movie Alien, where one by one these guys get picked off, and he's using all these Christmas terms like ho, 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 I've got the weapon now, or whatever. I've got a gun, I think is when he says.
Yeah.
And we've got the yippee-ki-yay scene where Hans Gruber starts to identify him as a cowboy, and he's like, yeah, I'm a cowboy. So even though he's from New York, clearly.
That's completely wrong, right? It's in New York, you're not a cowboy, but because they're from United States, and Texas just happens to be really big, now everybody from the United States is a cowboy. That's
and he says that.
works.
Hans Gruber says that. He's like, what are you, just another American cowboy who's seen one too many movies?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do. Die Hard, another one. My husband will watch it every single time it's on. My kids now know the Die Hard. They know all Die Hard. Even the newest one where he is with his own kids, which kind of brings out the whole idea. But that one, I don't know if that one's during Christmas or not.
Right.
My husband loves Commando. That's his all-time favorite movie.
Great movie.
And I've heard this is actually, Die Hard was supposed to be the second Commando movie. And it was actually, I think, written by the same writers. That's why you're getting these cheesy, quote-unquote, one-liners. Mm-hmm. It's the let off steam Bennett kind of, those kind of one-liners. But, it's like they took his daughter, he got the daughter back, and then this was supposed to be the next thing that they were going to do. How do I know this? Because my husband won Die Hard trivia. I did not, because I have never seen any of them. So,
it's definitely one of those movies that a lot of people. I don't know if it's a gender thing or if it's just something that we grew up with in the 1980s that we just we identify with the holiday season. So.
Well, I'll tell you this, the 80s is probably the best time for all these movies because my favorite one is the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And it was right at the end, but in 1989. And first of all, Chevy Chase is probably the funniest person still. He's hilarious. And the fact that Christmas Vacation, they had to do a Christmas. I mean, it was just like they had to because he's perfect for that whole idea. And then of course Cousin Eddie, I mean really, I think he is the best character out there.
Every family, right, has a Cousin Eddie. And for our listeners, you need a little reflection here. If you think about your extended family and you don't know who Cousin Eddie is, it might just be you.
That's right.
Yeah.
More than likely.
Just think about it. Yeah.
But it's the best because it really does. It brings about just everything that's happening in the holidays. It's very family, again, oriented. And I mean, they have so much extended family that shows up to their house and now they're responsible, which does bring up that idea of, Christmas is supposed to be so much fun, but there's a lot of stuff that has to go into it. And it's just,
which means so many things can go wrong.
Oh yes, makes it more
it's sort of
fun.
like a wedding, right? There's so many moving parts, something's bound to go wrong. So just kind of try to enjoy it. In spite of its imperfections.
And it's full of great
problems.
one-liners. It's full of great physical comedy, facial comedy. I swear, Chevy Chase has one of the best facial expressions in every scene. He doesn't have to say a word, and you know exactly what he's feeling.
You were talking about the one-liners. So when my wife and I, when it's starting to get a little tense and we want to break the tension and just like, okay, we need to de-escalate here, the line is, "Don't piss me off, Art." Yeah. Which is what Chevy Chase says to his father-in-law, right? Yeah. So that's
There's also a story about a dad who is trying to do the very best job that he can to deliver the holiday season, the best holiday season, a memorable season to his family, and the whole family working toward that end. And you see that with the Christmas lights.
Yeah.
The scene where he actually lights it up, and the neighbors they can't do anything because they can't see anything. They're blinded by it.
Yes.
I have very fond memories. My dad's coming up a lot in this conversation. I lost my dad 17 years ago this January, but my dad was a heavy smoker back in the 80s, would not sit through a movie. Like it would never happen. And that was the one movie he went and saw in the theater with my mom and I. So I have very fond memories of like watching that movie. And I think I laugh through the entire movie always, but the part where he's actually hanging the Christmas lights and he's on the ladder and he keeps doing his hand like around.
Is that not the funniest scene? He can't figure out
the
how
physical comedy in that one section is just perfection. It's so good.
And when he loses it and goes over there, I always have to laugh when he punches the Santa.
Yeah.
He takes it out on the
Love this.
Santa.
And he kicks him into the air.
Right.
I also love when he has the chainsaw and she says, "Are you okay?" And he says, "We needed a coffin. We needed a tree." So it's like the slip of the tongue. I love the whole movie. It's perfection.
Speaking of the tree, when the squirrel comes flying, oh my gosh, that we just die. Because my dad, reminds me of Chevy Chase so often because he does stuff like that. Like he doesn't think, he gets himself in situations that we're like, what are you doing? Because he just goes all out without thinking of the next thing that's going to happen.
When you're a dad, you're responsible for fixing everything, whether you know what you're doing or not, right? So that's a big part of the comedy of this movie is just I don't know what I'm doing, but it's my job to do it. So we go out to saw down a tree, but I didn't bring the saw or whatever.
Another thing that I love is that even though cousin Eddie might be kind of like the outcast or the black sheep of the family, he's just as welcome as everybody else. In fact, he asks Clark if his kids can sleep inside. And he says, "Okay, no problem. We'll make room." And there's something about that as well that just kind of brings it home with regard to the holiday.
And cousin Eddie, really, it's like he has a great heart. He just doesn't know what he's doing.
Doesn't he say that at one point in the movie? He says like his heart is bigger than his brain. And he's like, "Well, thanks, Clark." Like he takes it as a compliment, and I think that duo of, that's Randy, correct?
Randy Quaid.
Dennis
Yes.
is the good one. Randy's the one that kind of fell off the radar a little bit.
It was an Independence Day.
And so the Randy and Chevy together are just like they play so well together. I love watching them together.
And it's just one thing after another. Like he's trying to help Clark, and he goes and kidnaps his boss, and it's like, what? Like, why would you think that was the way to help him? Like, who in a million years would be like, yes, I need to help him, so I'm going to kidnap his boss and bring him over here? Like, that just shows, people look at things a different way. And he was trying to be sweet. It just was a bad situation.
I love that part when Clark Griswold says, "What I really want for Christmas is my boss to be right here in this living room." And you can see off
The
to the
wheels
side,
turning.
right. The cousin Eddie is thinking, "That's exactly what I'll do," and you
Yes.
can see him imagining that's what and sure enough, he goes and does it. It's
I also
great.
really love the part of the movie when he gets trapped up in the attic, when Clark is in the attic and he's biding time and you're trying to find warm clothes and he finds these great home movies and you have Ray Charles serenading, this
Yes.
beautiful moment, and he's watching these old videos and tearing up, and then, she pulls the ladder and he falls down. But I love Chevy Chase is just brilliant at physical comedy. I've heard he's terrible to work with, but
reputation's not good.
Reputation's not good, but he is literally what a study in. He's a Buster Keaton kind of physical comedian.
He's hilarious.
But written by John Hughes, who is absolutely one of my favorite writers, probably forever. We're talking Breakfast Club, we're talking 16 Candles, and he went on this run of Christmas movies, and then he kind of went off the map for a while. He had a bunch of movies that were not great. One of the other Christmas movies that John Hughes was a part of was Home Alone, which we have not talked about at all, which I just watched a show about Home Alone, one of my favorite Christmas movies.
Yeah,
hands down.
That is my husband's favorite. That's what he said. We were talking about it, and he said Home Alone, and I was like, "Oh, that is such a good
so
one."
So good.
How did that slip by?
I don't know.
So
we can definitely talk about. It is. It's a great. It also brings up the whole idea of, like, it almost the idea of like you have to be good or you're getting in trouble, but also it shows a lot of independence in a small kid. Like, really, truthfully, would that ever happen now?
No.
Oh my gosh, people would freak out. Okay,
and the fact that there were no cell phones, so they're trying to track down a payphone at the airport.
It's life before versus life after cell phones, right?
Absolutely.
My students the other day, we were in class and they wanted to be able to just, so every now and then they'll say, we just want to watch a movie. And their response, I said, well, what would we even watch if y'all wanted to watch a movie? We're not going to do that. But if you wanted to watch a movie, what would we watch? They said Home Alone. And I said, well, how in the world would I ever justify that? They said, it's castle doctrine. He's defending his own.
Well, that is true. That is true.
Actually,
There's a Netflix show out right now. It's called The Movies That Made Us, and it's a little mini docs about different movies. And they do, Home Alone is one of them, but they do Ghostbusters and Dirty Dancing, and there's another one they do. Anyways, the Home Alone one is brilliant because they shot most of that in a school. It was like an old school, and they built all of the sets inside of the school. So the end, when he starts flooding the basement and all of that, they actually built that in the pool at the school, and then they could flood it because it was inside of a pool.
Wow.
But I learned a ton of things about that movie. And obviously Macaulay Culkin, my goodness, what a great little actor he was. I mean, he sold it.
He did.
He absolutely sold it. But Joe Pesci playing a bad guy. Oh, what?
Yeah.
Joe Pesci being the bad guy. But they had looked at Robert De Niro to play that role, which I think would equally be as funny.
I think it would.
But something about him and help me with his name.
The tall guy.
I can't think of what his name is.
Oh my gosh, my
His
husband's gonna
sidekick.
kill me. Daniel Stern.
Yeah.
There's the way they look. You've got this tall, lanky guy, this short mobster looking guy, and I think it's like Mario and Luigi, or you've got these great.
I always think
duos.
of those dogs, like the little bitty dog and the big dog. And it's like,
So you've got these great duos, and it just somehow works with those two guys. But
it's a great one.
Castle Doctrine, yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's
Defending
thought it
his
was
own.
creative.
It's the look of Abbott and Costello, right?
Right? Yes.
That's how they
Yes,
look.
yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the same, and you've got this amazing, once again, physical comedy. I guess I'm like perpetually an 8-year-old because I just think it's hilarious when people fall down. But who doesn't love an iron to the face? Like that's
Right?
really funny.
And then stepping on the nail. I mean, it's almost like you can feel it.
Yes.
It's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh my gosh, like that hurts so bad. And I mean, that is really a good one.
The iron in the face actually leaves the mark.
Yes, and
You
it's
know,
so funny because
it
he like
is.
turns it on and leaves it hot, and
Yeah, and
So-
then the hand.
handle,
Yeah.
yeah.
Put the hand.
so. Anyways, I just wanted to bring up that one. I think that's a staple.
It is.
Thank
Definitely.
you for bringing it up. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I mean, really, this is one of the best. And Frank has brought up this one, so I'll let you run with it.
Shortly after 2003, my children introduced me to this movie that they had seen that I had not yet seen. And of course, this was Elf, starring Will Ferrell, and has quickly sort of established itself as a Christmas movie. One of the standards, certainly one of the 21st century standards for Christmas movies. So it's sort of kind of added to this list that we've kind of already gone through of movies that came before Elf that are just, absolute, virtually instant, whatever classics in the category of Christmas movies. I really love so much about this movie. One of the major themes that really sticks out to me is this idea that, Buddy the Elf, played so brilliantly by Will Ferrell, is this guy who doesn't fit anywhere. And I think everyone's kind of had this experience of no matter where I go, no matter what circles I find myself in, I always sort of seem at the edge. I always seem a little bit like a fish out of water. Everyone's kind of felt like that. How come everyone else's relationships are so easy or immediate, and it always seems like when I attempt, so when here's this full-grown guy, right, who's supposed to be an elf, at the North Pole because he's not built like the other elves, and so he doesn't fit there. But then he's grown up in elf society, and so when he gets to New York City, he doesn't fit there. He doesn't even fit in his own family because they don't recognize him as one of their own. So I think that's kind of what. And there's a point in the movie where he's kind of been rejected by everything and everyone there in New York, and I think everyone's kind of felt like that at one time or another. So I think that's kind of interesting. I thought to myself, who could have played Buddy the Elf other than Will Ferrell? And I got to reading about this movie and realized that it was originally written for Jim Carrey, that the writer of the screenplay was thinking Jim Carrey. Now, that would be interesting. Of course, we'll never know unless they decide to do a remake, but why would you do that now since it's been done so brilliantly? But I think, okay, if there's one other person maybe who could have been Buddy the Elf, it would have been Jim Carrey, but the role wound up being played by Will Ferrell, and it's just absolutely the innocence, not being aware of things. There's so many great performances in this movie, not just Will Ferrell. Now, James Caan as the father. The only hang up I have about that is I'm such a big Godfather fan that when I see James Caan, I think, okay, this is Santino, Sonny Corleone, and he still looks, enough like that with his curly hair and everything.
Not all the characters from Godfather did that. We talked about that yesterday at lunch.
Yes.
Some of them have aged very differently. Diane Keaton, Al Pacino.
They look a lot different. I mean, I think that if at the time that The Godfather came out, you imagined, okay, what's this person going to look like 25 or 30 years from now? The way they looked 25 or 30 years later was not what they looked like. But
and with Al Pacino, the way he sounds,
his voice changed quite a bit.
Big time, yeah. I was late to the game on watching The Godfather. I mean, I didn't grow up watching The Godfather like as a child. Like, I'm gonna go, Mom, Dad, I'm gonna go watch The Godfather. But I watched it when I was in my 20s, and Pacino had aged by that point, and I remember watching it and I was like, who is this guy? He is kind of hot. Yeah. And then I was like, that's Al Pacino?
Like,
really?
That's not him.
Yeah. I mean, he was a really attractive guy, but he fit that role, that very powerful, good looking, mafia guy.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about the elf is how, is that the elf or elf? It's not the elf. Is how they put him in all the little bitty stuff.
Yeah.
Like how they put him in the tiny shower, the tiny bed, how they make him look so huge compared to his elf dad. And I think that is what is one of the things that is so funny about it. And I love that they thought to do that instead of just making him like an elf who's displaced, but they made him like a tall guy, not just a regular size, but a really tall person against all the elves. And I like how they managed to make it really look like he was not.
So visually, it's very obvious that here's someone who doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And by the way, the connection to A Christmas Story, of course, is Peter Billingsley makes a cameo.
Yes, as an elf.
Ming Ming.
Yes.
It's an uncredited role.
Yeah.
But
you know it's him the minute you see his eyes. You're like, that's clearly Ralphie.
That's Ralphie. In that movie, and then the bad Santa, the imposter Santa in the store is none other than Howard Stern's old radio buddy Artie Lang, who plays that role brilliantly
and smells like beef and cheese.
Smells like beef and cheese.
I think about that every time I'm having a snack of beef jerky and cheese.
Right.
I probably smell like beef and cheese now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but and also this was kind of, Zooey Deschanel, this was her first time really singing in front of everybody, I think. And I remember watching this and going, I need this girl to put out an album. And then, of course, she did.
Then she did.
Yeah, her voice is amazing. But what I love so much about them two, they both really contradict each other, like are contrasting to each other. Like he's all happy and and she's a fabulous singer. But if you look at her, she just looks sarcastic and a little pissed off all the time, and I love it. And it's just, they're really like opposite, but they come together because they just have the same interests. And I think that's another thing that's really cool about this show.
Another tidbit about casting is I think that one of the two security guards who takes the Will Ferrell character out of the Empire State Building. I believe that's one of Will Ferrell's brothers.
Oh, it could be.
It is?
I think so.
Possibly,
So the casting in this movie is really kind of interesting with Ed Asner.
Yes.
And Bob Newhart.
Bob Newhart is lovely.
Quite a cast for this movie, but just absolutely memorable, enjoyable, classic for all the right reasons.
And lots of one-liners again.
Yes. Lots of one-liners.
It's chock full of them. Well, here we are at the beginning of the Christmas season. Hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas. In Christmas spirit, Beth and I got you a gift, Frank, for being on the show. You and I had visited about this book, Farewell to Arms. This copy is from 1953.
Wow.
This is incredible. Okay, it's a 1953 paperback copy of A Farewell to Arms, and it looks like a 1950. The cover art and just the color and everything. Thank you so much.
But it's a really good copy. It's really cool.
And it would sell for a lot more than its original.
35 cents.
35 cents was the original selling price for this.
Wow.
Thank you
It's
so
wonderful.
Merry Christmas.
much. Thank you so
cool.
much.
Merry Christmas.
I won't read this at Christmas time, though, right? That would be a real downer.
Please don't.
But thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Okay, listeners, we are so glad you got to meet another one of our faculty members, and you got to meet Amy Presley,
who's technically a faculty member as well.
She's a faculty member. I don't know what I'm talking about here. We're grateful to work with such caring individuals in both our department and on our campus, though, to be frank. And we have 2 future episodes. We have an episode with Dr. Alan Key, also from our department, that will be over rational emotive behavior therapy, and that is upcoming, as well as Beth and I's 3rd episode in our opioid crisis trilogy, and that will be over treatment for addiction with an as of now unconfirmed guest that is an addiction psychiatrist, but we hope to get that guest confirmed soon. Once again, before we go, Beth and I would like to recommend another podcast also produced here in the Panhandle PBS and FM 90 studios, and that would be Amy's podcast. She and Hillary Holsey co-host Check Me Out, a podcast for book lovers. They talk about different genres of books with special guests and authors. It's available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast apps and podcatchers. So thank you again to our guests this morning. Thank you for listening. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. Thank you guys for coming.
We'll be back soon with another episode.